Hello, and welcome to 30 Plays in 30 Days, a live arts retrospective. I'm Ann Hunter, the new executive director. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Tonight, we will be revisiting the 92-93 season at Live Arts. In a moment, I'll be joined by former artistic and executive director, John Gibson. But first, let me recognize our neighbor and community partner, Champion Brewery, with whom we share a fierce commitment to independence and innovation. That's their slogan. We're grateful to them for keeping Charlottesville happy and well-fed by offering curbside beer and food pickups during this time of physical distancing. Thanks for all you do to forge community, Champion Brewery. And now, please welcome the legendary John Gibson.
Hey, Ann.
Hey, it's okay to applaud at home. We can't hear you, but we can feel the love.
We can.
John, nice to see you, and thank you for joining us from your home in Atlanta, Georgia, my home state.
Is it really?
Yes, it is. I was born in Chattahoochee County, Georgia, and left before I got an accent.
That's out where they're taking the reopening of Georgia seriously.
Yes, yeah, got out just in time.
Yeah.
I understand that you have a little surprise to us that we have been plotting.
Oh, cool. Yeah. So it may surprise people to know that Ann and I have, though she's only been in the job for 8 or 9 weeks.
3 months today.
3 months today. Congratulations. We've actually been in conversation for about half that time. For the last 6 weeks or so, Ann and Jeremy and I have talked a couple of times a week, and they have been diligently shaping a path forward for live arts, forging ahead. And I wanted to do 2 things. One is to endorse the plan that they've made. I know everybody's waiting for nostalgia, and we'll get there. We're going to go down memory lane. But looking ahead is also important. I think they've done a really good and smart job of accounting for what might or might not happen, and the scrappiness of live arts will be a great instrument moving forward. They've also been serious about raising money because it's a tough time for all kinds of nonprofits, but especially for theaters. We depend on being in the same room together at the same time, and that's not possible right now. But they've got a lot of great ways to look forward to that, including this. So my husband, who's also named John Bloom, we were talking about the confidence that we feel in this plan, and the excitement that I have about reconnecting with live arts folks tonight in this format. And so we wanted to issue, because we're going to be talking about the old building, the old space, 609 East Market Street, we wanted to issue a challenge to people who either remember that space fondly or wish they had been there. If you make a donation to live arts in the coming days, maybe even during this program, and just somewhere in the memo line or in quotes, include 609. That's the building address for the old Mickey building, 609 East Market Street. Tag your donations, 609, and John and I will, up to $1,000, match the total donations. And we're glad to be able to do that.
What a generous gesture, John and John. So please convey your thanks to your husband for helping us look back and forge ahead in this time of COVID-19. John is too modest to say so, but when we started, yeah, that was my attempt at humor. Let's see if anybody gets it. Those who know John. Well, when we were forced to temporarily close the theater in mid-March, he called and said, you know, I used to raise money for live arts. I did it for many years, and I haven't done it for 10 years. And I thought I was never going to do it again, but I'm compelled to jump in again and help because I believe so much in this theater. So I had never met John before. That was my first conversation with him, and I was very moved and delighted to be working in partnership with him on this, what we're calling the Forging Ahead campaign. This is not a fundraising event, though. No. This is about looking back at a remarkable season. So let's jump into the retrospective part of that, if you're okay, John.
Yeah, that's great.
Okay, so um, there is a theater. I've only been here 3 months, but I do know there's a theater space at Live Arts, cleverly called the Gibson,
Yeah.
named after you know who. For those who don't know or can't remember, would you please tell us how you first got involved with Live Arts and what has kept you involved for more than a decade?
For going on 3 decades, yeah. So my late partner Joe Barker and I moved into in the middle of December 1991, the old Mickey building, which is
Right next door.
yeah, it's right next door. There was the old Mickey building, the old Monticello Hotel. Sorry, the old Monticello Hotel. Then the TV station WVIR, and then 609 East Market Street. So we were in the old Monticello Hotel on the 6th floor. I could look out my kitchen window and see this. It wasn't a courtyard then; it was a parking lot. And there was a blurb, a promo piece about an upcoming event at that theater that had just started the year before. And it was a production called A Final Evening with the Illuminati, or A Few Things You May Want to Know Before the End of the World. And we'll get to that because it was in last night's segment.
Yes.
So I walked in on January 2nd, 1992, and said, "Is there anything that you need?" And Will Kerner was frantically multitasking. He was expecting at any minute a visit from their nemesis of the day, the health inspector, because one of the ways Live Arts made money every way it could. They had a kitchen, and they had to serve a certain amount of food to serve beer. So it was crucial that the kitchen be hygienic, which is it. It was not. But he needed cove molding glued down around this multi-purpose room that was a kitchen sometimes, a scene shop sometimes, a chair storage sometimes, a dressing room sometimes. So I did that.
Sounds like now.
Yeah. And then said, "Is there anything else you need?" And so they were rehearsing the Illuminati, and there were brilliant Michael Parent and Larry Goldstein, and their director was John Quinn, and he had the strangest directing approach that I'd ever seen. I later realized the genius of it, but John would sit in the third row and lie down across the chairs, and to all appearances, just be fast asleep. And Larry and Michael had been collaborating for a long time, and they were fraught. They had so many questions and challenges and grudges and delights and inside jokes, and they would just go on and on and on and on and on with no need for input from anyone else. And so they would go for, an hour, and Quinn would sit up and lob in some hand grenade of pithy insight that got Larry and Michael's attention and got them thinking about something else down another path, and then he'd go back to sleep. So anyway, they said that their set designer had quit, and they had a couple of platforms and whatever, and they needed a set, and they opened in 8 days. The building's landlord, Gabe Silverman, had a plumbing supply warehouse next door. Don't ask. But we were allowed to raid the plumbing supplies to infinitely. We could take all of the plumbing supplies and use them, apparently. And so I set to work making a set out of plumbing supplies. And as I did that, the whole cast of characters of Live Arts came through the door. There was Will multitasking like an 8-armed Indian god, 10 things at once. Thane and Kate Andrews, one of the great unsung heroines of Live Arts. Thane came in as if he was auditioning for the role of Jack Donaghy in 30 Rock. He was in full-blown Alec Baldwin libertarian mode all the time. I thought it was an act. It turned out not to be at all, but it was endlessly entertaining. He was very good at it and still is. And Kate was like this icon of clean and cool and slim and coiffed. And I thought that it was like the Kennedys had come in the room. And someone commented on last night's thread, I've been watching these, that one of the things about early live arts was how dirty it was. And it was filthy. I mean, you can't, it was unspeakably filthy all the time. And the thing about Thane and Kate was that they were just clean. They were impeccably dressed and clean and from another planet, clearly. So, and then Fran, of course, force of nature, and Bill Thomas, the box office manager, he was like a cross between, it was as if Ned Flanders was playing the MC in Cabaret. He would greet you with Oakley Dokley or have a goodie, you know, like it was, and that was genuinely Bill. But he also told these unspeakably filthy anecdotes and jokes, and you're just like,
which we're not going to do in this episode. But
well, no, I mean, I know, I have standards, some, and John Owen, the most charming and talented. I mean, he probably still is the most talented person I've ever known. He could play the piano beautifully. He spoke French. He painted like a dream, and he would paint in. I never saw this literally, but he could have painted in a tuxedo. He always dressed so nicely, and there was never a speck of paint on him. Meanwhile, I was using spray paint as hairspray. I was just covered in theater and in my natural element and very happy. So I came in that day and I didn't leave for 18 years.
Whew. That is the story of origin. Whew. Well, so that scrappiness, that resilience, that's one of the strengths that we're drawing on to now today as we reimagine the future of live theater and live arts in Charlottesville. You told me that in the early years of live arts, you didn't really have seasons. You just had packed schedules of plays and coffee houses and raves and dances. Why no seasons?
Because it was, why no seasons? Because seasons meant that you were becoming the establishment. There were theaters around that offered seasons, and they were not live arts. Live arts wanted to be different and of the moment and able to follow a whim or a passion. And that served us very well for the first, I think it was 6 years before we had a proper season. And also it was, you know, we were lucky to be planning ahead to next week. There was
and you never knew where the money was coming from?
Oh, we knew where the money was coming from. It was coming from Thane and Will and the dance parties. And anywhere else, we would rent out the space. We had, I think maybe in this year span that we're talking about, we had the film festival. We hosted the film festival, and we had the Flat Duo Jets and Howard Finster performing in the space. So it was, it was a revolving door. We would sometimes do a show, 8 o'clock curtain, 10 o'clock down, strike the set, protect the set, strike the audience risers and chairs, and bring a rave in and have the doors open by 11:30. And there would be, at 11, there would be 500 people waiting in line. That's maybe an exaggeration, but not by much. There were hundreds of people. And that went on for years. So it was, and Michael said a couple of things. Larry alluded to this. He said that live arts is who shows up. And there was great power in being present. And so we were always together over and over and over. But he also always asked these questions. We would get into a fix or a jam or at cross purposes. And Michael, who was our godfather, our Swami, he was the most universally respected figure in that universe, and compassionate and wise to an extraordinary degree. He would ask us over and over, what do you want to put into live arts and what do you want to get out of it? And those were great clarifying questions. And we would sit on the floor of Thane's apartment. Thane had an apartment upstairs in the old Mickey building. So that's where the staff meetings would be, was in his apartment. And we would battle and battle. And then Michael would ask that question, and we would all end up in tears hugging each other, and go on to do it another round.
Another round.
Yeah.
Hmm. Well, that is the perfect segue to look at this collection of photos and memorabilia that we have assembled, not from season 3 or from season not 3, whatever we call it.
Okay, so straight up, The Maids. That was directed by Lisa Newman. She was one of the great connections that Live Arts had from the beginning was with Slow Down Ray, was with the University of Virginia, and Lisa was a student there. She had a passion for this piece, and Fran played one of the maids. The other actress in that photo is Sandy Dick. And Fran was so visually striking. She was such a compelling presence. You can't, she was
strong, tall,
6 feet tall. She rode crew. She was on the crew, not team, but there was a crew club. And so she rode every morning. She was in great shape. She had this beautiful mane of hair. She was opinionated and talented. She could act, direct, draw. She was, and it was very much Fran's baby. And she was, she mothered that theater in a way that was irreplaceable. The theater would not exist without Fran. There are people about whom that is sometimes said, but of no one is it truer than Fran Sackett-Smith.
So Speed the Plow.
Yeah, David Mamet, and there's Kristen Keithley in the background. Give me Julia Gray, maybe, in the foreground. The beauty of that piece was that it was only 3 characters. So we either did, it seemed like there was nothing in between. We either did pieces like the coffee houses where there were 30 performers, or we did things with 3 actors. And this one was David Mamet, one of our most produced playwrights across the years. It was the case, and I think it's probably still true, that David Mamet, Edward Albee, Susan Laurie Parks, Sarah Rule, Shakespeare, and Stephen Sondheim are the most produced writers at Live Arts.
So what spoke to you about Mamet's use of language? He was...
I don't know. I didn't, all I did was, I cranked out a set and lights for it. There wasn't time to pay much attention to Mamet's use of language. That was up to the director and the performers. What I needed to do was get that set that you see in the background that was, again, made out of spare parts. There's Dan Scott, our leading man of the first years. He's wearing my sport coat. I had a nice sport coat that I bought when I worked at iMagnon. And it was, he was playing some sleazy Hollywood type, and I happened to have something in my closet that suited. And that's the way everything worked in those days. There is a chair behind him, a couple of chairs. There was a furniture store in Charlottesville. I don't know if it's still there, called La Différence. And they would, it was extraordinary to me that they would do this, but they would loan us furniture for sets. And I was like, we're taking it to the dirtiest place in Charlottesville. There's going to be a fingerprint when it comes back. And they were like, it's cool, don't worry about it. And so they were very supportive. They made us look better than we should have. And that's another of the secrets of Live Arts. We, from the beginning, looked better than we should have for a couple of reasons. One is Will Kerner's photography. For the first 20 or 25 years, he took every photograph of publicity or archives. He's made room for others now. He's not hogging that as much. There's my lovely jacket, Dan wearing it well. And the other way that we looked great from the beginning was with the graphic identity. And that was, Thane led that charge, but Fran often did it. Catherine D was in there, Kate Andrews. We had a stable of really strong graphic designers, Bill LeSueur on occasion. And so the evidence, the outside evidence was sometimes stronger than the actual article. Like, we kind of looked better on paper than sometimes we were, which is not a bad way to be when you're starting out.
Did you know that Bill LeSueur and Kristen are on the Arts Lab board, still involved after all these years?
Yeah, I had noticed that. This is, so last night they were talking about the Fantastics, and there was a photo of Bill LeSueur, and no one could recall who directed the Fantastics. John Owen directed the Fantastics and did the most graceful job imaginable. And I noticed one thing that caused, it was a poignant moment for me. On the poster of the Fantastics, there are Ron Heller, since deceased, and Bill Nibel playing the parents, with John Carden and Susie Juroff as the young lovers. But Ron was actually a late-breaking replacement. Farrell Mathis, no, I've got this backwards. Ron was going to do it and then couldn't, and Farrell stepped in. And Farrell died just a year or so later. But it was one of those, just, you know, like, why is there was a picture of Farrell performing, and then there was a photo of Ron, and it, you know, people who were paying attention, as I was, might have wondered about that. But there were, in fact, two different fathers in that production. Left-handed Three Throws was another piece that Michael took the lead in, and it was basketball themed. I didn't have much to do with it, so not only are there no photos available, I'm sorry I don't have any good stories about that one.
We have enough stories for the other productions, though, so let's just move on.
Oh, yeah. So this
how about Christmas
is
Carol?
Stupid. Yeah, Christmas Carol. Oh, my God. So I grew up in a theater in the Park in Raleigh, North Carolina. And the guy who ran that was, maybe still is, named Ira David Wood. And he was an astonishing talent. He wrote his own, he's best known now as the father of Evan Rachel Wood. But he wrote his own adaptation of A Christmas Carol, and it ran forever, decades. And it was a cash cow. Theater in the Park was exactly like Live Arts. It was a little warehouse space. But he took this production, grew it to the point that it played Raleigh's Memorial Auditorium every year.
That's huge.
For decades. It's like 2,500 seats. And they would run it for weeks. And so we were in those early days balancing, like, what kind of theater are we going to be? And so I made a strong case for A Christmas Carol, and it was such a strong case that I ended up playing Scrooge in the first season. Now, the photos that you have, go back, Ray, if you can. Yeah, these are actually from the second season's production of A Christmas Carol, and there are a couple of ways I can tell. One is the figure at the center is an actor named Les Muchmore. Les Muchmore. True.
That's terrible.
No, it's his name. And he played Scrooge the second year. I played Scrooge the first year. Bill Thomas directed it. And he did every year. We did it for, I don't know, 6 years, 8 years. I don't know how many, but a lot. It kept coming back, and the Kerners hated it. They wanted to drive a stake through Scrooge's heart, but there was no denying that it was, for us, a cash cow. And so the first year I played Scrooge, okay, hold on this one. So there's, I'm going to go from on the front row, there's Faith Garrison, Corey Lloyd, Betsy Burton, Bill Thomas, who directed, Jeff Snyder, and then sort of clockwise, the Tucker family, Les, a bunch of the children coming back across now. There's Alice Reed, Lois Tucker, Gary Davenport, Patrick Reed, and then there in the back row, from left to right.
If you hadn't brought that up, I was going to.
Are me and Amanda McRaven and Bill LeSueur. Note several things. Look how much hair Bill LeSueur has. Look how tiny and young Amanda McRaven is. And look at me. I am holding, unmistakably, a jelly donut and a cigarette in a cast photo, and there at the center are a bunch of children.
And what is the story with the donuts? Everybody's holding a donut.
Yeah, somebody just brought us donuts. I mean, it was, we just took our cast photo with a donut. And
of course you did.
And, you know, it's 1992, so that if you have a cigarette and a donut and children, and they're all in the same picture, nobody thinks twice.
There you go. There you go. Let's move on to Girl's Guide to Chaos.
Yeah.
This is another one that Fran directed?
Yeah, it was. From a great script by Cynthia Heimel. It was kind of Sex and the City before Sex and the City. Cynthia Heimel had a book or a column, just like Sex and the City, and turned it into a play. And Dan Scott, slow down, Ray. I got things to say about Cindy Burke. If Dan Scott was in the same way that Dan Scott was our leading man in those early days, Cindy Burke was our leading lady. She could do anything. And in this, she gave one of the most pricelessly hilarious performances that I've ever witnessed. Fran brought out the best in the three female leads, Cindy, Dinah Pearson, and Carol McAvoy. But Cindy in particular, who had these long monologues on, again, the piece of borrowed furniture for that was this butterscotch leather chaise from La Différance. And Cindy would fling herself across it, and I would just gasp each time, like, oh my God, we're going to lose. We're going to have to end up paying for this $2,000 piece of furniture. And I can remember on the opening night, so all of this elaborate paint work in the back, that was the early 90s, but there was a tile floor. And as the audience came in for the opening night, I had just finished painting that floor, and was blotting it with paper towels as the audience began to arrive. That's how wet that set was.
Just in time theater. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was. It was so good. It was so funny. And it was a huge hit, as it should have been. And Cindy, the other two leads, Dinah and Carol, were each so good. But it was Cindy's story. I mean, it was she played the title character, and she was wonderful.
We're going to go a little faster through these next ones because we're running out of time. So I think we could be talking for hours. I don't know if anyone would stay with us. There's enough stories to fill 2 hours.
Yeah.
How I got that story.
That's the first show I directed at Live Arts. Jack Donahue, a brilliant performer. Jason Williams, who's gone on to great professional success. It was a fictionalized Vietnam. The slides were elaborate. Okay, this is hold on this one for just a moment. So all of these panels in the back are 2x4 frames covered with paper or fabric, and they had to be very straight 2x4s, 12-foot 2x4s. So the only truck that we had in those days was Will Kerner's ice cream truck. He ran the ice cream truck in Charlottesville, and so we would take the ice cream truck to Lowe's to pick up lumber, and we'd drive the ice cream truck out into the lumber yard and bribe the guys who worked there with fudgy pops to get us the straightest possible 2x4s. And it worked every time. They were like, the ice cream man is here.
And why wouldn't it?
They would like throw extra lumber. It's the middle of summer and you're there picking it up with an ice cream truck. We were the most popular guys possible.
That's too funny. Now we are getting on to the Threepenny Opera.
Yeah. We had done a musical the year before. It was a pretty straightforward musical. It was simple and beautifully staged and produced. The costumes looked great. The sets and lights I did, so they were okay. John directed it to a fairly well. We had beautiful music by Gail Pataky was our music director, and it was well sung. But Threepenny Opera was something else. It was our first sort of concept musical, and the concept, simply enough, was the Hogwaller Ramblers, Charlottesville's most popular at the time bar band, are very Brechtian. Why don't we get them to play for a Brecht and Weill opera? And so we did. And you can see in the foreground that band, David Goldstein on accordion, David Well-Beloved on percussion, Gate Pratt, John Dean on clarinet and reeds, and you can't see, just out of frame, Dan Sebring, or maybe that's him. Dan was the most accomplished pan-instrumentalist. He could play anything, banjo or trumpet, or you name it, Dan could play it. And they were constantly fighting, but they also took the score apart and remade it in their own image, which was a wonderful and terrifying process to be part of. There's Bill Williamson at the center. There's Dan Scott with his bevy of lovelies, Lorna McDaniel and Emily Tisdale, and others. That sofa was in every live arts production in the early years. It's very noticeably in No Exit. It was in Threepenny Opera. It lived back in the green room or in John Owen's apartment when it wasn't on stage. It was very popular.
It didn't come from the furniture store?
No, not that one. They didn't carry leopard print.
So
in addition to everything else, we did this series of coffee houses, which they were Fran's brainchild, and they were a cash cow, almost akin to the acid house and dance parties and raves. And we served food. It was sketches. There was a cast of 20, 25, music. There's Michael Parent, Jeff Snyder, Rob Wolf. And you can see, go back, Ray. You can see in the foreground these tables and chairs. And so we served, the cast would often be at the tables and chairs next to the audience, but we also served food, and we get these big catering trays of lasagna, and the dressing room would double as a kitchen. And one of my lasting memories of the coffee house years and all of this was the food service, and Will ran the food service. And I'm haunted by this image of Will he'd shove a big slab of lasagna into the microwave, set it, pull it out, and then check to see if it was done by plunging his thumb in up to the knuckle, and then smooth over the top and send it out to the customer. That
with a little
showbiz. There's Carol McAvoy again, and her husband Jim, a very talented folk singing duo. And there was room for everything, music and comedy. Halpin wrote a lot of these. There's Ron Heller on the left, Dan Scott in the center, and Stuart Ross. This was a King's edition of the dating game. So Prince's. There's the King of Rock and Roll, and Hamlet, and somebody else, Dan as some other king, playing the dating game.
So each of these had its own theme. Fran chose the themes, and then they all had original scripts and comedy routines.
Yep.
And why were they so successful?
Because they were great fun. They were topical. Here's a great example. This is a first ladies luncheon. So I don't know who's who exactly. There's Leela Fenton and Sandy Dick with her back towards us. I can't make out the others, but unmistakably there in the pearls and the polka dots and the white wig at the center is pop-eyed Cindy Burke as Barbara Bush. And she wore a big bodysuit as well, because she's a slim and elegant figure. And she was very, very funny as Barbara Bush. I mean, just those eyes bulging out was really all you needed, and you were 9/10 of the way there. There's a complete cast, and I mean, all of these people, you would jam them into the back, into these two little rooms, one of which doubled as the scene shop, one of which doubled as the kitchen, and there was a light board and sound board, a tech space above, and they just keep coming. Like it was totally a clown car. I recognize lots of those folks. I don't recall all the names, but Brian Rust played memorably Gilligan and any other sort of airheaded character. There's too many to single out, but the abundance and the camaraderie and the cornucopia of talent. That's why the coffee houses kept coming back.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's something we're even considering now. Is that something we could revive? There are a number of things that were part of live arts early years that maybe will have a new life in this post-COVID-19 world.
Well, one of the things you haven't mentioned, another key to live arts from the beginning was the fundraising. And I'll mention again the challenge. If you donate and tag in your donation 609, however, John Bloom and I, my husband and I, will match you up to a total of $1,000. And the galas, we did those every year. and they were huge parties. They don't show up in any of your season reviews, but they should. They were their own productions. We would start planning for the next year's the day after the other one closed, and elaborate production values, a way for people. They divided the audience into 9 groups, and they would rotate through 9 miniature theaters on 15-minute increments all through the night. It was Thane and Kate's idea, and we'd show little 12-minute excerpts and give them 3 minutes to get to the next space. But because it was the party of the year forever in that town, and because it had the work that we did embedded in it, it wasn't just some rubber chicken dinner. We also had the 9 leading restaurants of Charlottesville donating some component of the meal and someone putting it together. It was Barbara Shiflett for years. It was a host of great caterers who made it happen. But it was an unforgettable party. And we had major donors from the beginning. I remember Viggy Kuttner and Beatrix Ost were crucial donors in the early years. And they had such distinctive personal style, and they supported not only financially, they came to the theater, and you would look out, you'd peek through the back, and you'd see in a row or at a table what we called a flock of turbans. And that was Trixie and her circle, very stylish women, but they're often very upswept and done. So the flock of turbans was with us.
Now involved with Ix Art Park, which is one of our creative partners, especially looking at how we reinvent performance space in this time. So
wherever Viggy and Trixie are, there's sure to be something of interest. And wherever live arts is, there's something of interest. 30 years in, it's hard to imagine it's been as long, but the scrappiness, the inventiveness, from the beginning we did puppets and parades and coffee houses and parties and dances. And in this era that's ahead of us, that DNA is solid. Yes. And I have a lot of faith in the people who are running live arts now and in the plan that you guys have shaped for the going forward. And I have, John, my husband, and I have the faith to put our money where our mouth is. So take us up on the challenge, give something to live arts.
Yeah. So it's funny that you should mention the faith, because one of the tenets that we're using in the reinvention process for live arts going forward is something from Admiral Stockdale, who survived 7 years at the Hanoi Hilton during Vietnam. And when he got home after his stint as a POW, they asked him how it was that he survived when other people didn't. And he said 2 things. One, I understand the brutal reality of my situation, and I have unwavering faith that I will persevere. And we are using that as kind of our model going forward. Know all the difficulties out there, but don't be defined by them. Have faith that there is another way that we can continue to do theater, forge community, and be a force in the arts community in Charlottesville. So thank you for bringing that up.
Forging is a complex process, and it's a dynamic process. It was not a lightly chosen word. And of all the things that I'm proudest of, that mission statement is maybe the thing of which I am proudest. It's served well, and it's surgical in its precision and in its force. Blah, 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 whatever.
It's brilliant.
It's a good thing. What I've enjoyed most this evening is a chance to yell at Ray Netzel, a chance to see old friends, many of whom, Bill Thomas is no longer with us, Bill Williamson, Dan Scott. There were many folks in those pictures who aren't still on stage, on the stage of life, and there are many others who are still to this day involved. It's even from a distance, it's a joy to know that that unique community still has at its heart a place where ordinary people can do extraordinary things.
Extraordinary things. We have one more surprise tonight, and that is an opportunity to listen to the Ballad of Mac the Knife from Threepenny Opera. And this is something that Kristen Keeley provided for us. And
Let me give it a quick setup, Ann, if I
Yeah,
may.
go ahead, please do.
So what you'll hear is the opening number. It's famous. We had to wipe the slate clean. We had to make it sound like it's a very familiar song because it was a pop song. Bobby Darin recorded it.
Right.
Sinatra recorded it. So we had a couple of secret weapons. One was the artistry of the Hogwaller Ramblers.
Mm-hmm.
And the piece starts really slowly and then it speeds up and it adds instruments as it goes. And another thing was the voice of Jamie Dyer. I mean, Jamie Dyer was and is a Brechtian figure. He exists outside of time and space, and time and space are grateful for that. Then finally, Mickey List, my spirit animal, she gave us this very simple movement pattern. And so the stage began with just Jamie Dyer doing this thing and doing it slowly. And then it speeds up, adds instruments, the rest of the cast comes in, and by the end of it, the wheels are coming off the thing, and it's a delight. I hadn't heard this in 28 years until I heard it during our little rehearsal the other evening, and it holds up well.
Ray, you want to do the honors?
Oh, the shark has pretty teeth, dear, and he shows them pearly white. Just a jackknife has MacHeath, dear, and he keeps it out of sight.
Now add an instrument.
When the shark bites with his teeth, dear,
And up the tempo slightly.
Billows start to spread. Fancy gloves, though, where's MacHeath, dear? So there's not a trace of red
Now a little faster.
on a sidewalk.
And a few more voices.
Sunday morning,
That
lies a body.
Dan Sebring's banjo starts to pull in.
Someone sneaking round the corner. Is that someone? Mac the Knife.
Now we really start to take off.
On a tugboat
Shall we dance, John?
by the
Oh, no, not again.
river.
We've only
The
just now.
cement bags dropping down. The cement's just for the weight, dear. Fetch your Mackie back in town. Sloppy City was discovered with a knife wound and he keeps it.
Look, there goes Mac the knife.
Out of sight.
Yeah, it was strong. I have to mention, another of our secret weapons was a costumer named Elaine Trehu, also Elaine Overton. She costumed the Fantastics, Threepenny Opera. She made all these Victorian costumes for Christmas Carol out of drapery material. It was astonishing. But she dressed all of this cast in an amalgam of the 1770s of the original John Gay's Beggar's Opera. Then the setting of the Threepenny Opera, which is Queen Victoria's London. Then as well, Brecht and Weill's 1930s Berlin and contemporary America. So there were plastic vests and bowler hats, and it looked amazing. Yeah, and Jamie Dar wore a beret and striped like harem pants, and he would take his false tooth out, so he had this jack-o'-lantern grin. We made a tiny turntable. We would out would come a sofa, out would come a counter. But it was a really good production. I mean, kudos to
even today. Yeah.
Like kudos to Kristen Keithley. As I said, I hadn't heard that in 28 years, and part of it is his exquisite recording. He's done a really lovely job, but it's also that we took great care and I did the same thing with Peter Greiser on Jesus Christ Superstar, like that whole reinventing the orchestration, going in and gutting the music and remaking it. That Live Arts has done that for a long time. But that's where we started to do that. And it was something particular, and it was 28 years ago. I'm old now. Let's stop.
We all are. Good thing were young then and could have all the energy to do this incredible work. We are in a place to wrap up. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, John. An absolute joy to talk to you, and something other than fundraising. And thank you for all of you for spending the evening with us. If you feel so moved, please take John up, both John and his husband, John, up on their $1,000 match by making a donation to Live Arts and writing 609 in the notation. The donate link is pinned to the comments below. And be sure to join us tomorrow evening when we will be talking about the 93-94 season with our moderator, Jamie Pate, and our guest, Kristen Keeley. Thank you again, and hope to see you all soon. Good night.
Good night.